Hey guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. So recently me and Kris were doing a buddy read for the second book in the Bloodsworn saga by John Gwynne, which is called The Hunger of the Gods, the first book being The Shadow of the Gods. And me and Kris did a buddy read on the first book. We both really loved it. In fact, it was one of the books which was really hard for me to put down, despite all of its, I wouldn't call it flaws or problems or issues, but things we didn't really find too great about it. But overall, really good book. So when we were deciding to do a buddy read on book 2, we were both really excited. But overall, the problems that were in book 1 were in book 2 times 100. It was unfortunate, but it was just one of them things. But I think that we enjoyed reading this book together. It was a lot of fun. So before I tell you what the story is all about, let's just go straight over to Kris now, where she'll be telling you her overall thoughts on the book.
Hi everyone, I'm Kris. David, thank you for having me on your channel to talk about The Hunger of the Gods. David and I started buddy reading this back in the beginning of December. It took us a little while to get through the whole thing because it is a chunky book. This book continues the saga of Elvar, Orca, and Varg from the Shadow of the Gods, the first book. And the first book, I think David and I both really loved. This one I did have some issues with. I liked the book overall, however, a few things here. So first of all, the first book followed 3 different characters, Orca, Elvar, and Varg. In this book, we still have our main 3. However, there are new characters and new points of view. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't like those chapters. I don't know why they were there. I feel like our main 3, Orca, Elvar, Varg, their stories very much just continue in a straight line from the previous book. So Orca in the previous book, she's a mama bear, she's out to find her son. That continues into book 2. Elvar, she's basically like a princess. She is a Jarl's daughter. She's out to prove herself. That continues into book 2. Varg, he's kind of also trying to prove himself and trying to get revenge for someone who killed his sister. That kind of continues into book 2, but I feel like his storyline kind of drops off a cliff a little bit to make room for new characters. But I personally didn't really connect with the new characters because I liked the old characters. But other than the characters, I mean, this does continue to be like a super fascinating world. It continues to be like rooted in this like Norse mythology, all these Norse gods. I mean, there's a giant wolf on the cover, there's dragon gods. I mean, there is a ton of cool stuff in here and a ton of cool world building. If you're someone that likes fantasy for like the world building and all that stuff, this is definitely a great series for that. As far as the plot goes, because of the characters, it's kind of hard to say, but I will say that the plot in the beginning of the book I felt was really exciting. There's a lot of exciting stuff that happens early on. I think the middle of the book drags a little bit. There's a significant chunk where I feel like not much happens. And then at the end, there is an exciting ending, but it does end on a cliffhanger. And I am not someone that likes a cliffhanger most of the time. It can be done well, but most of the time it aggravates me. So those are my thoughts on Hunger of the Gods. So now, David, back to you.
Thanks, Kris. And if you want to hear my overall thoughts on The Hunger of the Gods, then please check out Kris's video. I'll have it linked down below, as well as a link to her channel. So this is going to be a spoiler-free video, and this is going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this book. And I also want to address that because this is a sequel, this is book 2, I will be mentioning things that happened in book 1. So if you haven't read book 1, then I would just like pause this video or come out of it, because I won't be completely spoiling it, but I will be mentioning events that happened in that book, because I cannot talk about book 2 without mentioning these. So The Hunger of the Gods follows our 3 main characters from book 1 over to book 2, and that is Orca, Varg, and Elva. We also have a bunch of new side characters that we follow. They have their own chapters, and we also have a ton of extra side characters that aren't really the main focus, but they are kind of in the background. So book 2 starts right from where book 1 left off, with the dragon god being released into this world by the Raven Feeders, who we follow in our own separate unique chapter. We follow that band as they are wandering around with the dragon gods, and you would think that they would be causing all this destruction and chaos, and the dragon would be flying around, getting noticed as much as they possibly can, and burning all these towns and villages, and basically causing all this chaos and destruction. But I think that they are more like planning to go to war, and they are like sitting around and planning and being sneaky about it. And Elva, because she and the Battle Grimm were at this event and saw the dragon god being returned, they have decided to resurrect the dead corpse of the wolf god, who is just a skeleton at this point. I feel like this isn't really a spoiler, because the wolf god is on the cover of the book, so I think going into this, you know that the wolf god is going to be returned, and that is the case here. And her path is just to try to confront the dragon god with the wolf god and have a battle with each other and try to defeat the dragon god as well. Because the leader of the Battle Grimm was killed and defeated in book 1, she has been struggling with the fact that she has to lead this band, and there's also that conflict of feelings and emotions within the members of that group about how and if Elva should lead them. So that's that conflict of interest. And it also touches on the fact that she's still a runaway princess, and that does come and bite her in the arse at one point in this book as well. Orca is still trying to rescue her son. Now, as the book was nearing its end, me and Kris were discussing and talking about if she was ever going to get her son back, and whether the book was going to leave off right where book 1 did. I won't say if she finds her son again. There isn't much difference between Elva in book 1 and book 2. She is trying to train Leaf, or whatever his name is called, and she is still a really, really tough cookie, and I think that she still has a soft side, but she's just really determined to get her son back. And our third character, Varg, who is a runaway / freed slave, who in book 1 was trying to find out who killed his sister. And in book 2, it's kind of pushed to the side. You're like, okay, aren't you still going to try to find out who killed your sister and why? But because Varg has discovered that he has the blood of the wolf god in him, and all members of the Bloodsworn are tainted, which means that they have the blood of certain gods running through their veins, which means that they have magical abilities and powers that they can summon at will. He is struggling to come to terms with the fact that he has these powers, and also try to control them as well. He has all this rage and anger within him whenever the wolf rises up in him, and he has to try to control it and harness it, and not let it use and abuse him, to put it bluntly. And like Orca, Varg doesn't really have much of a character arc. He doesn't go through a dramatic change. Elva goes through the most change out of the original 3 than they currently do. And as I said, we have all these other main characters that weren't really necessary. They kind of took away from the main 3. But I feel that they were only added because we had to be introduced to new elements and bad guys, because this is a grim dark book. There is necessarily no good guys or bad guys, although I feel this kind of like rides that border between epic fantasy and grimdark, because you do have good guys in here and you do have bad guys. Could be a interesting discussion down below in the comments if you are interested in that, if you are interested in the discussion about if this book series is grimdark or not. But anyway, we have all these side characters that slow the story down. Both me and Kris both felt strongly about this. There was a character that was there primarily because we had to get the point of view of the dragon gods and the raven feeders. But as the story progresses, we discover that they aren't that different between themselves and the Bloodsworn. They just go about things completely differently. And we also follow another character which isn't really necessary, it isn't really interesting. But I feel that was only introduced because we have to be established with the queen of this whole realm, which I didn't really find that interesting. I wasn't really sure whether she was good or whether she was evil or whether she was pretending to be good but was secretly evil. You know what I mean? I didn't really know what made her tick. We never really got to know her. We only saw her through the perspective of this character, which I didn't really care that much for. He was okay, but yeah, I was just thinking, come on, can we please just get back to the main 3? But the story of this book is that they have to try to confront the dragon god. There is all this talk about if the dragon god even has come back, and there's even all this talk if the gods are even back as well. Because what I found out in book 2 is that the gods have the ability to turn into human forms of themselves. So from these massive beasts that are as tall as buildings and skyscrapers, they can morph into human beings. And that is why and how they can reproduce. I'm not sure whether they only had sex with a few people and they passed it through the generations in their bloods, or whether these gods were extremely horny and had sex with loads of people, had these massive orgies, But that was kind of a discussion that me and Kris had in book 1, because I'm pretty sure that wasn't established in book 1. We were like discussing about how these people, these tainted, got the blood of gods in them, whether they were injected with the blood directly into their veins, or how something that big could have some sex with someone really, really small, because we are tiny compared to these gods. And there's also a discussion about how these gods are trying to come to terms with the fact that this world has changed. People aren't worshipping them as they used to, and they are trying to come to terms with that, even though they may not like it. And the combat in this book is pretty much the same as in book 1. There are more fights between the human characters rather than the gods having a full-blown battle with each other in their beast mode, which is what I wanted to see. We do find other gods that are mentioned, like the rat gods and the eagle gods as well. It was just a fun book. It was a bit disappointing that we had several issues with it. It was a bit longer than book 1. I feel that John could have cut 100 pages out of this book and we really wouldn't have actually missed a lot of the plot. But all my problems with this book hasn't really put me off reading book 3 or however many books in the series. Maybe book 3 will improve on this. I was telling Kris that we have to get used to all these new characters because they will be put to and be included in book 3, so that's something inevitable. But hopefully we aren't introduced to even more characters. I'm pretty sure that at the beginning of the book, because I was reading it on Kindle, I'm pretty sure at the beginning they had a character list and it went on for several pages. I'm really not a fan of that. You should really not have to do that in any book. But that's just like a pet peeve of mine. So guys, have you read The Hunger of the Gods and The Shadow of the Gods? Are you interested in reading this I won't call it a series, but this new series rather? And have you read anything else by John Gwynne? I'm interested to read his Malice series and see how I find that. Yeah, we can have a discussion about it down below in the comments as well. And please do not forget to check out Kris's video. I'll have it linked down below. And if I didn't mention it already, it has a clip of me telling you my overall thoughts on the book, if you didn't really get the general gist in my video. But Kris is awesome, so you should go and check her out, anyway. So guys, with all that out of the way, I'll see you on my next video.